So we'll start out, though, with kind of the simple question, what is an essay? We use the word. You've heard it, I've used it, you've probably used it. And if you ask people, what's an essay? Most of the time they say, something you don't want to do. But, of course, there are better definitions than that. How would you define an essay? Millie? Just like out of the blue, hit you with it. Someone says, an essay. What is it? How would you explain?
Writing down your thoughts or opinions on a prompt or thought.
Okay, excellent. Writing down your thoughts or opinions on a prompt or a thought. Is that what you said? Okay, yeah, that's a very good definition. If you look in the dictionary, it generally says a short written composition, generally expressing the ideas, belief, or opinion of the writer. And of course, we know that an opinion without facts to support it, well, that's just obnoxious. So we need to learn how to collect up, organize, and represent facts, but at the same time, we need to develop the skill of thinking about those facts so that when called for, we can add that content in as well. There's kind of two ways to do it. Collect up a bunch of facts and then decide, okay, what can I think about this? Another way would be to say, I have an opinion. Can I find some supporting evidence or research to support that opinion? And so people will go both ways. So I like to go over some different categories of essays. So pull out a fresh sheet of paper, and we'll take a look at a few. Now, there are different lists of types of essays, so it's a very good chance that you have taken or you may take a class where someone attempts to give you a list similar to this one. And if it's different, that doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong, or they're wrong and I'm right. Oh wait, I just said that the same way. I guess I'm always going to be right. No, I mean, it could mean that I'm wrong and they're right, or they're right and I'm wrong, or it could just be different. So the first type of writing is expository. And this is from as most words we encounter have roots from somewhere. This particular root is Latin, and it's ex and posit. Posit means to place, right? I place something. So when you exposit, you place out something for someone to learn about. So essentially in expository writing, this is when you teach or explain something presumably that you know about. You know about it because you researched it and learned, or you have life experience, or you have therein a combination. In my life, professionally, most of my writing falls into this category. The great thing about expository writing for me is I mostly have a friendly audience. I write for people who are already wanting to learn what I can teach or explain to them. So I wrote once an article on why students should use pen instead of pencil. I wasn't really arguing so much as I was just explaining all the reasons as to why it was a better choice. So this idea of expository, that's kind of, in your simplest form, it's like a report. But the question is, where do you get the information, and then how do you present it? Another type of writing would be descriptive. And that's where you paint a picture. You create pictures in the mind of the reader, images, and sometimes that's the lasting feeling. You've read the whole thing, and what remains isn't necessarily a strong conviction, but a fascinating or interesting or sometimes disturbing or maybe elevating image. We're going to use a short essay by one of my favorite authors, G.K. Chesterton, called On Lying in Bed. And it's all about the great benefits of lying in bed. oddly, it seems that he feels that lying in bed has value only if you do so because you want to. If you are sick or tired, then it doesn't have the same benefit. But if you lie in bed just because you want to, then this has potential. I think every teenager secretly wants to read this essay. And I don't remember a whole lot else about it, except the image. And Chesterton was a bit corpulent. So you think of this very large man just lying in bed. And then he goes on to talk about affixing a piece of chalk to a long stick. And then you could lie in bed and draw pictures on the ceiling. And wouldn't that be the greatest of all things? And I'm not sure the parents would appreciate that particular aspect of the idea. But the thing that I came away with reading it was mostly the images. And so oftentimes you get that type of description. Then you have what is common in the world of high school and college writing exercises, argumentative essays. I think they do this to teenagers because pretty much everyone is aware that teenagers just love to argue. You're naturally good at it. So why not help you become better? Now, this, though, is an exercise, and very much the essay you just wrote on this prompt was that. They were asking you. In fact, they specifically said, you know, do you agree or disagree? Support this, and it's an argument, right? So this is essentially when you have some kind of thesis. How would you define a thesis, Allie? That's another word we use a lot, but what does it mean? How would you define it?
You're defending your beliefs.
Okay. Want to add to that, Lisa? No? Anybody? Amy? Yes.
A statement that you're trying to prove or show is true or false?
There you go. Yeah, something you're trying to prove. Something you're trying to prove. And so to prove it, you have to do more than just say it again and again and again. You have to come up with what? Yes, Drayton.
Facts and information.
Okay, so you want to support it with facts. And where do you get those facts from?
Sources?
Sources? Well, in this case, you really couldn't go get any sources because it was in class, on demand, write this now with you and your brain and whatever you happen to carry around in it. But what do you look for in your mind? You look for, yes?
Reasoning.
Okay, good. Reasoning. And how would you define reasoning, Zane?
Thinking of a logical explanation that would prove your point.
There you go. Basically, reasoning is when you use logic. So if you study logic, you're likely to be better off when you go to argue things than if you don't. It's funny how we see sometimes in the public forum, people have a strong opinion, they argue, but they are lacking much in the area of reasoning and logic. And of course, for some of us, that can be kind of disturbing. All right, what else? You got reasoning, you also could use. Think about how you went about writing that essay at the very beginning. And so you were looking for logic and reasoning. You were also thinking what? Drayton.
I was going to say examples.
There you go. Yeah, they always want you to use examples from real life, from your life, or from reading that you've done as well. And that goes right in with evidence, right? So they'll usually say reasoning, examples, evidence, and that's how you prove your thesis. If it's just you and your brain and whatever you happen to carry around in it, you're limited to your memory. But if it's evidence that you can go and collect up from an external source, then you can use research and do citations, and that works a little bit better, doesn't it? How many of you would have liked to have access to the internet for a half an hour before writing this paper this morning? Wouldn't that have been convenient? Yeah, then you would have been able to get a lot more information to support your thoughts on that. Okay, so argumentative is when you have something to prove and then you try to do so. This is not used terribly much outside of an exercise. What you see more in kind of the real world would be persuasive. Persuasive essays or persuasive writing is when you try to move someone's opinion. And so there's strategy involved in this. Rather than having a thesis and then trying to prove it, you want to be sure that anyone could join in and read what you're speaking about. So the better way is to ask a question. So instead of a thesis, you ask a question. Let me give you an example. Let us say that I write a little piece on reducing traffic deaths in the United States. And so my thesis is the driving age for all 50 of the United States should be a minimum of 18 years old. That's my thesis. And then I go and try to find statistics and arguments and other people, and right? But right up front, I say, driving age should be 18. Who's going to read this? Noah?
People who already agree with you?
Probably people who are like, oh, okay, well, that makes pretty good sense. Right off the shot. Who's going to throw it in the trash and say, what an idiot?
People under 18.
Yeah, everyone else, right? So one of the dangers of argumentative writing is that you can alienate your reader by having a thesis that they disagree with right up front, and then, okay, there's like, I don't even care, they won't even read it. One of the big differences between writing and public speaking is that in public speaking, you have a captive audience, right? It's kind of fun to go into a room and have many hundreds of people sitting there, and you just think, I've got these people for a whole hour, right? Because they can't really just get up and leave unless they want to be super rude. And if they're in like the middle of a row, in the middle of a room, it's even better. But in writing, you don't have a captive audience. Anyone can either read or not read something you've written. Now, we assume that most teachers do read what students write. So maybe they're forced to read it, but if they disagree with your thesis right off, they're not positively predisposed towards whatever you're going to say. So instead, you ask a question. If I start my paper, recently it has been under public discussion that the driving age in the United States should be raised to 18 years old. Is this a good idea? Okay, now who's going to read this?
Everyone?
Everyone. Why?
Because you didn't just say that you already disagreed with everybody else right off the bat.
Yeah, because people are curious. They read something and they think, I wonder if this person agrees with me or if this person is stupid like everyone else. I mean, we're kind of just naturally curious, right? So we're kind of forced to read and find out whether the author agrees or not with whatever opinion we may or may not have. Now, it's possible we don't have an opinion about something at all. And then we're probably, reading whatever more as, okay, teach me about that. But if it has any bit of controversy or question, then you have persuasive writing as a strategy by asking the question. And then you use that strategy. And so you present your evidence, examples, and evidence and reasoning. And then you do one more important thing, and that would be to refute any opposing views. So you would want to refute. What does that mean, refute? Yes, Zane.
To prove wrong what people might say against you.
Perfect. There you go. So you want to prove wrong an opposing view. So you refute the opposition. And there may be more than one thing that needs to be refuted. But I think some of you are pretty good at this. It's a natural tendency, right? Because you say, now, Mom, what you said is not quite true because of this and this and this and this. And what I said actually is, in case, the facts because of this and this and this and this. And therefore, you should let me go to the mall with my friends tomorrow. You're naturally talented at this type of thing. So these are kind of two sides of one coin, and they have different use, different purpose. But there are then more. The next one would be analytical. Analytical writing. Now, the word analysis in its simplest form, what does that mean? Analysis. Little harder to define. Anybody have a thought? Hunter?
To study it?
Okay, to study something. Anyone want to take that one step further? Noah?
Looking at parts of a thing, what makes up a whole.
Excellent. Yes, so analysis in its simplest literal meaning means to break something into its component parts, right? So break something into its parts and look at them separately. And then after that, you essentially render a judgment about it. You ask, what's the value or significance or impact? And so that's where we get the idea of kind of critical thinking, right? Often in the world of education, you hear people say, we want critical thinking. How do you develop that kind of thing? This is one aspect of it. Probably the simplest analytical writing that you would run into in the world in general today would be a movie review. Have any of you read a movie review? Now, I'm not talking about looking for how many Rotten Tomatoes there are. That's not a movie review. You know, that's just random people ranking something according to their personal preference. A movie review written by an actual professional kind of movie reviewer. Has anyone read one? You have? What kinds of things do they talk about in that?
They describe the different aspects.
Okay, good. And what are some of the aspects in a movie?
Just the violence level, like in the.
Violence level,
They
good.
also have family, spiritual, and things that have to do with alcohol and drugs, and kind of categorize things.
Okay, so they'd give it a kind of a review of who it's appropriate for by identifying violence, drugs, profanity, etc. So that'd be one aspect. What else might be included in a movie review? Zane?
The overall plot and the continuity of it.
Okay, so the plot, does it work? Does it keep you on the edge of your seat? Or, you know, the continuity, I like that term, the things connect up. What else, though? There's even more parts to a movie. What else is in a movie? Noah?
Soundtrack and editing.
Sure. Soundtrack, the music, editing quality. If it's like a superhero or a fantasy movie, it's got to have
Special effects.
special effects. If it's a period piece, then there may be attention to the details of
Clothing style?
clothing or costumes, setting, that kind of thing. So there's all sorts of elements that could be identified and could be evaluated, right? And so oftentimes it'll say there's this, and this was really good, this was kind of weak, this was the strong point, and in the end, I put it all back together and recommend you see this movie. It's worth your time and money, or don't bother, it's not worth your time and money, and then you can use your time and money better because you have been enlightened by the movie review. Do you see? So there's there's not as many aspects to an essay, but there are things that you can look at in terms of how did this person write this story, or this book, or this article, or this essay. One of the tricks they like you to do in many college classes, I don't know, Allie, maybe you've done this, is you have to write an essay about how someone else wrote their essay. Have you ever had to do that? You have? Then, of course, there's a couple more. One of those is narrative. What is a narrative? Amy?
Tells a story.
Story, yes. So why might it be important to have good story skills in writing? What do stories do for you? Noah?
They can help illustrate a point or provide a type of subtle criticism or persuasion.
I like the way you think there. Yeah, the story can be part of your examples or evidence. But a story is generally more interesting than just fact. Why? What is it? What does a story have to have in order for it to kind of catch you, to grab you? Zane?
Good plot and characters.
Okay, so it's got to have a character or more. Characters, and then some kind of conflict or problem. And then you have what? Solution. There you go. A resolution or a solution. So, lastly, we would have the personal essay. And this has a fairly limited use. This is when you use the word I because it's all about you. If you write an essay about yourself, generally it's because you're applying for a scholarship, or you're applying to a college or university, or possibly you have been specifically asked to write about your experience in a particular assignment. Or maybe you grow up and write blogs. However, I will give you a little heads up. Generally, in academic writing of all sorts, you want to avoid using the word I in your writing, particularly if it comes in this type of expression. I think, I believe, I feel, in my opinion. That kind of qualifies what you're saying and weakens the writing. So when you want to do strong academic writing, don't say, I think, I feel, I believe, or in my opinion, because basically nobody cares what you think, what you feel, or what you believe, or what your opinion is. Instead, you say your opinion as if it were the absolute truth, the facts, right? And so you make an assumption that you can speak authoritatively without having to qualify, in my opinion. Do you see? And that makes it stronger. You think about the real world. People have opinions all the time, but they often write them as though they were the truth, the fact, right? And then the listeners and readers have to discern, okay, is that true? Where's the support? Where's the logic? Or is it maybe just an opinion or an agenda? And so we have to become good listeners and readers, which is one reason that doing a lot of different writing is helpful. So that's a list of several. Now, the ones that are probably most important for you as college students or college-bound students would be the argumentative, because they like to do that as an exercise. Possibly the persuasive, certainly the analytical. The expository falls kind of in that category of telling what you have learned about something. So that's where you'll probably spend most of your time and where we will spend a lot of our time.